So welcome to our Reserved for Vets podcast. We are on location today. We're at a place called STN. I'll break that down in a little bit, but this is the first time. Chad just met Dave for the very first time in person a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
Y'all still want to keep doing the podcast together?
Yeah, for sure.
And we had a nice little visit. Now we're going to sit down for a great chat here that is reserved for vets. We're going to talk about triggers today a little bit. We're going to talk about that thing that seems to happen in relationships where one person gets to work on themselves and now the other almost feels like they're not important anymore. You know, there's so much to helping and doing and being that partner. And then when that partner gets well, what's your purpose? What's your role? So we're going to jump into all of that stuff today. I'm Mathew Blades. Chad from Mental Joe Apparel. How are you?
Doing good, sir. How about yourself?
Awesome. And Dr. Dave. Thank you
Dave
for being here too.
Yeah.
How are you, man?
Great.
All right, well, let's jump in. We love talking mental health here for vets, and triggers are where I'd like to start today. And it kind of is because, listen, I've been working with a couple of people and talking to a couple of people, and I see the relationship, and I see two people poking the bear all the time. And seemingly they know what triggers the other person, but they keep poking anyways. And I don't know what the recipe is there to stop that, but maybe Dr. Dave, you jump in first and you sort of talk about what a trigger is, and you might be able to explain to people what I'm talking about.
Yeah, so with triggers, there are different things that kind of set people off. A lot of times it's related to unmet needs, things from childhood, frustrations that are unresolved, and the other person might have their own issues going on. Maybe they're just inattentive. Maybe sometimes they're angry. And if they know what sets you off, they can sometimes do it. Sometimes it's intentional. Sometimes it's not intentional.
Right. That is the trigger, right? That is the thing. I don't know if you experience that. You and I talked briefly, Chad, and your wife, Carrie, seems like she was probably pretty compassionate and pretty empathetic to your situation. And I mean, mostly there to help you find a way through it.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, in previous podcasts, I think the biggest thing is communication. Yeah. We're both really good about communicating. She knows, body language and just energy that I might carry into the room, or same thing with her. We can kind of tell real quick, like, you're having an off day. How can I help you? What's going on? What can I take off your plate? Things of that nature. So we're both really good. Me being an OCD clean freak, I would say if there's a trigger, it's like, not picking up the clothes that are on the ground, putting in the hamper. It's like, it takes one more second, do it right.
Is you getting upset about this, or your wife?
No, it's me. So if we're talking triggers, to me, that's probably a trigger where I get a little angst. Like,
so let me ask you, does that stem back to a childhood? Did you get your ass whooped if you didn't pick something up right away?
Yeah, I mean, not so much by my mom, because we knew it when I was young too. I was one of those kids that was dress. I had from the red to the blue, so I was like military made at 5, right? Like,
really?
Like shit was clean in my room. Like I made my bed, so there's really no problems with me. And my brother, on the other hand, he was like a swamp creature. You'd be lucky if you could find him come out of blankets and stuff. But yeah, I think there's probably something that goes back to childhood there, whether it's striving to be that number one, because if I can be number one, I can do everything right, then I'll stay out of the crosshairs, right?
Yeah, right. Well, and this is an interesting thing to talk about a little bit, Dave, which is, so we've talked previously in our podcast about inner child wounds and how that happens and how it's, you articulate it beautifully, and I hope you don't mind, but I pass along what you say to everybody, which is that trauma is on your permanent record. That's etched into your brain. It's there for life. You just have to learn to live with the sound of your record. And so there is this balance, though, of the inner child is screaming at me to punish my kids because if they don't do this thing, they should. But then there's this other piece of it where it's like, relax. Maybe does that have to happen right now? And I'll give you the example. I got fired up at my kids a couple of weeks ago because they didn't empty the dishwasher. Is that the end of the earth? Really? Is that affecting anybody's day? Not really. I mean, I want them to do it, and they did it. They just didn't do it as quickly as I wanted them to. And I know that's inner child shit, because if I had tried to pull that as a kid, are you kidding me? It would have been game over. Yeah. I'll be up when my game is done. I wouldn't have been able to finish that sentence.
No. Yeah. Right. And I think realizing that, then you can kind of step back from it and moderate a bit and say, okay, is this about me or is it about them? Because I think that sometimes can be the issue is, you're looking at it and, no, it has to be done now. It has to be done this particular way.
Some things do.
Yeah.
Some things do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And where I see it a lot with folks from the military is on deployment, it was life and death for a period of time. So that gets kind of etched into your brain. And then when the kids aren't picking something up, that kind of life or death weight is there, even though it's not life and death, obviously. And so sometimes that intensity can come across, and to everybody else, it seems like you're being mean because they don't get it. It's not, it seems out of context for them. And that's one of those things where you have to kind of catch yourself if you realize that it's becoming a pattern, step back from it, take a deep breath, go walk away for a bit, and then come back when you're calmer to, talk about discipline.
Does that resonate with you, Chad? Like growing up in the military and having to, have your bed made and this there and that there. Does that play into like when your kids don't pay attention to those details, you get a little riled up?
I'd probably say 3 years ago for sure.
Yeah, probably before ketamine.
Yeah, before ketamine for sure. Because I would look at it and like, what the hell, man? You can pick up your toys. Yeah. And I wouldn't rationalize it that, okay, this kid's 2.5 years old. All right? Like, take a deep breath, you jerk.
Yeah.
So before the ketamine, for sure, there was triggers all the time that would just set me off. And I didn't understand it. Why? Like you said, the dishes, they'll get done tonight. It's not a big deal. It's not the end of the freaking world.
Right.
But it would drive my wife nuts, or it would drive me nuts if something else was left out. So, yeah, 100%.
Right. And I think what becomes a force multiplier for that is when you take it personally. They're doing this because they're not respecting me, or they're doing this.
That's what it felt like to me the other day. It was like, this is an attack on me. You don't respect me.
Right. And so then that can cause you to come back with more intensity than you really need for the situation.
Which I did, and I didn't handle that very beautifully. I admit that one. If I can get a do-over, I'd like a do-over in that one. That's tough.
But I think everybody's gonna have. You're gonna have those days where you're gonna fly off the handle. Yeah. No one means it. You're just you're preoccupied in so many other things. I'll go back to the same thing with the clothes thing. I know Carrie doesn't do it intentionally. She's doing it because she's like, I have to get undressed. I have to get dressed because I got another meeting and I get these kids ready.
Yeah.
So now the empathy is starting to come in. Now I understand her story and like, okay, so it's not a big deal. I'm going to pick it up. I'll put it in the hamper. Not a big deal. To where before I'm going to make a stink out of it.
Were you less empathetic pre-ketamine?
Oh, big time.
Yeah. Did you struggle with empathy for a while?
A lot.
I mean, I know you talk about bar fights and stuff, which is so weird to me because I've never hit anybody in my entire life. I've never been hit in my entire life outside of a hockey game. And I mean, you're talking about having to get pulled off of dudes into bars. So there was some rage there early on.
Yeah, there was rage. I mean, I held the world.
Take a lot of empathy to fight.
No, I had the world title in Billings, Montana for a while. So I don't know if that's anything to be proud of, but there was some fisticuffs, as we used to call it back up there.
Yeah.
So.
Would you just get triggered and red? What was it? What was it for you? Like, I never understood guys that wanted to fight, so help me understand that.
Yeah, I think it's almost a disrespect thing.
Yeah?
Because it's funny, my sister and other close friends will always say, you never started it, but you always finished it.
Yeah, okay.
So it was always kind of like someone kept pushing that button and pushing and pushing and pushing, and I'd be like, hey, man, enough's enough, back off. And it wouldn't, so I figured, if I break this guy's nose, it'll end it pretty quick.
Yeah.
So, and for me I think a lot of military guys, when they come out, we float towards alcohol, right, to numb a lot of stuff. And then once you're numb, you kind of get in this one-track mind. The blinders are on. So if anyone pisses you off, it's kill or be killed kind of a deal. So, I mean, most of the times when bar fights and stuff I had, I was blacked out.
You were already wasted.
I was done. Like, I would just go to town. Like, there would be a switch. And it was wild. And then I'd come out on the other side. Let's go grab a burrito, guys. Like, I never understood why I went from 1 to 10 so quick.
Yeah, that's interesting. Did you feel a sense of remorse after some of those episodes?
No, never did.
Never did?
Never did. Yeah, and and it was so wild. So, like my mom says, you're not the kid I raised. Because I was this goofy-ass kid in high school. I did the homecoming, garb, and I was just goofy as shit.
Yeah,
right? And then I go to the military, and then I come back, and I find out, I'm this bar-fighting machine that prior to that, all I did was wrestle, so I was never really in, fights. But, yeah, it was...
Huh. Did you get in fights when you were in the military?
No.
Yeah. What do they do in the military if you get into fights? I mean, do they tolerate that shit?
Back, I mean, I hate to say back, but I've been out 21 years.
Yeah,
I've been 21 years I've been out, I think it depends. It depends the unit you're in. When I was in a soft unit, a Ranger Battalion, if you had a scrum with somebody, you're going out, you're going to go finish it. And
really?
you would go blows in the courtyard while other people are watching you. And you'd settle it, right? Because you're brothers. If you go to war, you have each other's back. So get out of your system what needs to happen and make it happen. So
that's wild.
Yeah.
Did you ever have to sit down with people, Dr. Dave, who endured that kind of stuff, and they were like, "Whoa, what the hell? Like, I thought we were brothers, and this guy's in the courtyard. I'm getting the shit beat out of me now. Like, this isn't what I signed up for." Or do you find that most people who engage in the military are pretty accepting to the violent component that comes along with it, or could potentially come along with it?
Yeah, I think for people that I've talked to, it's been more the second. That, if they're getting into a fight with somebody, they're there to fight.
Yeah.
They're in the right location, there's alcohol involved. So that's been more the situation. With the exception of maybe bullying, occasionally there'd be situations where somebody, for whatever reason, wasn't measuring up to some of the other guys, and they would just decide to all pick on them. And sometimes that would turn into almost like a hazing sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I can see that. Man, that's got to be weird for the guys, to go through that and feel like, I don't even belong in this brotherhood. Like, what the hell?
Well, it's that, but for me, I knew it was a mind fuck, right? Yeah. I knew they were there to play a game because they won.
Yeah, you've said that a number of times, actually.
Yeah, because I just knew it. You're going to push me how far? Okay, my body's going to quit eventually, man.
Right.
So we can do this all night, but I can maybe get a half a push-up in by midnight, I mean, I remember one of the you talk about hazing, and when I was in, hazing was a big deal. I got hung upside down. We call them fart sacks. But that was essentially your sleeping bag. And they hung you upside down. They tied me. And I had to recite the Ranger Creed upside down while it's raining in Fort Lewis, Washington, before they'd pull me back in the window. So that's just some of the hazing we would go through. So you add that in as being 19 and away from home, and you're getting throttled by a bunch of guys that you're looking up to. You just kind of play the game sometimes, unfortunately.
How much of that stuff do you think impacted you when you were going through your own mental health battles? Did any of that stuff recirculate, or did that stuff not play a part of it? Was it mostly childhood?
I think it was mostly childhood stuff. The military stuff, I think, was kind of like the icing on the cake, if you will. But I think it was more childhood type stuff that started coming out.
Well, Dr. Dave, you talked about compound fractures in the past, and that sounds like that's what that is.
Well, there was a question that I was wondering, though. During your fighting days, did you find that you were addicted to the adrenaline? Was that a component of it for you?
Looking back, I could probably say yes. In the moment, no. It was just fight or flight. I just had to protect myself at all regards, right? But looking back at it, I go, ooh, I kind of maybe enjoyed that a little too much, Well,
I can imagine, to your point, I can imagine you get done, maybe you work some dude over who was a real jerk in the bar, and there's high fives and, attaboys, and people can get pretty excited about your performance.
Yeah.
Right, and just the adrenaline of being in a fight.
Right.
On top of whatever else is going on with your buddies.
I'm such a chicken shit. I ran away from every fight. I never wanted to punch anybody.
Hey, I wish I was there with you running.
Really?
Shit, yeah. I mean, you break it down with what men or people fight over in general. It's fucking retarded.
Never
it's just
makes
dumb.
Sense
what
to
are
me.
we doing?
It never made sense to me.
No. So now being older, something happens. Hey man, let me just buy you a beer. Or hey man, I'm leaving. It's just this is not going to end well for either one of us. So let's So I think we all grow older and wiser. So. Hopefully, that's the goal.
Doing this thing right. Let's pick up on this conversation of when somebody has gone through the changes and the other person doesn't feel their need or their value. And this came up because I think we were talking maybe about somebody we all know who had gone through a series of therapies, found themselves on the other side, and then the spouse almost felt like, I don't know what my role is in this anymore. And Dr. Dave kind of alluded to the fact that she might start to poke a little bit so that she can feel that sensation of being the caregiver again and taking care of her husband in that way. And, you can role reverse if you need to, but jump on that a little bit.
Yeah, so there's an interesting dynamic. You have to figure in any relationship, you pick each other, when you pick each other, right? So if there's childhood abuse or PTSD, if there's things that took place in the military, and you meet and develop a relationship with somebody afterwards. You chose that person and they chose you because of whatever it was that was going on, right? And so there's a certain equilibrium that gets established in that relationship with that. So even dealing with trauma and even dealing with triggered behavior and anger and things like that, there's something in your psychodynamics that causes you to be drawn into that situation. And then when it changes, so you might have somebody that has horrible addiction, alcohol, drugs, whatever, and the spouse puts up with it for a long period of time, for many years. And then all of a sudden you kind of hit bottom, you start going to 12-step meetings, you start turning things around, you're maintaining sobriety, and instead of your spouse being happy and being just immediately support, they almost start like nitpicking and kind of undermining it and trying to get you back into old patterns again. And a lot of times it's unconscious. It's not like people, intentionally go out to do this. But if you got into a relationship trying to be the rescuer or trying to be the caregiver, and now all of a sudden that other person isn't as sick anymore, do you have a role in that situation? And these types of things, if you don't realize what you're doing, it'll really put a wedge in the relationship and sometimes lead to things breaking up.
What's the dialogue to help each other get out of that? Because it would seem to me like then maybe in that case the healed person needs to say to the other person almost, hey, I get what you're doing. I get that I set up some, and who does this, but I get that I set up some old behaviors in the past, and I used to act a certain way that made you act a certain way, but I'm trying not to act that way anymore, so could you stop acting this way? What's the dialogue to get out of that?
Yeah. I just thought of another thing, too, that goes along with it. If somebody's working on their sobriety, they might be putting 100% into trying to maintain their sobriety, which may mean neglect of the relationship. And so that could be another aspect of it too, of just not, because you're so preoccupied with trying to get that early sobriety in and do all the things that you need to, go to your meetings and maintain that level of support, that sometimes the relationship ends up getting neglected, unintentionally.
Is this where, to me, this is where therapy comes in, and that's what I talk about to everybody. It's like therapy is just about helping you live with the sound of your record. And if you've been in a relationship where somebody's gotten saved or healed and done the thing and the other person's still trying to, do what they're going to do, this is where therapy comes into me, right? And we have a chance to work on some strategies and solutions to deal with these things when they come up.
Yeah, I think where therapy comes in is you have somebody that's not emotionally entwined in the relationship.
More of a referee.
Yeah, looking at patterns and helping to reflect that back to you so you can kind of see what's going on.
I asked you this the other day and you were kind of intrigued by it, but how interesting would it be to record people's conversations when they get into these squabbles? I mean, I think back to maybe when you and Carrie were fighting, when you would kind of fly off the deep end when you were coming around. When I was in my deep depression and the conversations that I had with my wife and my kids, I'd love to go back and listen to those now and just see, you don't want that, Chad, huh? You're out.
No, you wouldn't want to
I don't
listen
think
to it.
You don't think I would, huh?
Yeah, that'd be ugly, I think.
Yeah?
Because I think you probably say some shit that you think is pretty rational.
Yeah.
Right? But then when you hear it back later on, it's like, oh,
yeah, you hear
cringe.
it back, you're like, oh, that was dumb.
Yeah.
I mean, my whole life is on tape, right? 27 years, my whole life has been on tape. And so, everything I've ever gone through has been up for everybody else to kind of understand. And so I've always felt like there was real value in hearing yourself back, because so many of us don't. It's like, let me record you in this meeting and let me show you exactly what you act like in a meeting. And then people see it and they think, oh, I don't want to be that person anymore. Yeah. Because you fix yourself pretty quick when you hear yourself back.
Or you dig in and deny it.
Okay. All right. That's fair. That's fair. So specifically as it would relate to veterans coming back who are working on PTSD and actually really trying to climb out of this thing, what do you see as a spouse's role in helping them out of that, or just with it when it comes?
Yeah. So first off, everybody has triggers. Everybody has had a childhood. Everybody has small t traumas in their life. Everybody has losses, right? And so you learn to work through and work around those things. And so for everybody, there are little things that if people know you well enough, know how to set that off, right? So I think in a relationship, you both have to commit yourselves to at least try not to deliberately set off each other's triggers, right? Because that's kind of an act of war. You're deliberately trying to provoke another person, and that person, at least on paper, is your support, right? So if that person is in fact your support, why do you want to undercut your support, right? So I think that's the first thing, is trying to understand each other's triggers, and as best as possible, try to commit yourself to not using that in an argument. Because
that's part of it. And Dave and I actually talked about this with regard to this person that I was referring to, is that unfortunately, her trauma comes with her. Unfortunately, your trauma, Chad, comes with you. Your wife needs to be sensitive to that. I mean, that's part of the deal in some regards, no?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, but it's tough because you see people poking all the time, like they still want to get after it.
When we first started dating, Carrie would she didn't realize she was poking, I guess you would say.
Yeah.
As soon as we had an adult conversation of, hey, like, I don't appreciate when you do this, and here's the reason why behind it.
Yeah.
She immediately was like, oh shit, I could totally see how that's a trigger.
Do you think of any examples?
I guess you'd say in the beginning, like, she would kind of flirt with other guys at the bar. I'm like, hey, we came together. Like, what are you doing flirting with these other? You want to get another drink? Go ahead, but I got shit to do.
Yeah, right. What are we doing here?
And I think that's kind of the game that's played, sadly, in the dating world anyways. You kind of feel out what you can get away with, and are they really interested? Do they get jealous, So, it wasn't anything egregious, but it was just enough, like, some of her patterns were coming through that triggered me, and then she realized, and then, kind of vice versa. So...
Right, and you have to draw a truce. I mean, if you want the relationship to work, if you're going to keep setting off the other person, now you're undercutting your own support.
Yeah.
That's a great way to put that. I think that's, if any takeaway today, it's that by doing that, you take away the people that are really there for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
they're only going to last so long, right? Eventually, everybody's going to bend till they break.
Yeah.
I mean, I think another way to look at it, because sometimes too, in intimate relationships and partner relationships, you kind of get away with stuff or push things to a degree that you wouldn't try to push with a coworker or with your boss. So sometimes, thinking even like, how would you treat a stranger? How would you treat the checkout person at the supermarket? Like, would you say that to that person? I mean, there's lines that we all have in our mind in terms of like what behavior is too far, and so you wouldn't say that to the checkout person. Why is it okay to say that to your wife? So I think putting that respect first and making a commitment to that. Yeah.
That's really what it is the respect to talk to somebody like you want to be talked to. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. I want to ask Chad really quick. He's got his apparel line, the Mental Joe apparel line, with his penis T-shirts, and they're selling like hotcakes. Which is
boner
great.
T-shirts and mushrooms.
Listen, this is what you have, man. Let's just call it what it is. But he's also partnered up with a place, and you're going to start offering TRE. For those that have listened to our podcast along the way, you maybe remember the episode with Dr. Berselli where he came on and talked about it in great detail. But for those that are new, explain TRE and then explain how you might be able to serve them with it.
Yeah, so TRE is kind of short for tension and trauma release exercises. Again, I am no Dr. Dave. I always call myself...
Nobody is, man.
I always call myself the knuckle dragger that's just kind of figuring it out and it works, right? But as we all know, we store stress and trauma within the body. Psoas muscle is one of our biggest muscles that we have in the body. And the whole point behind it is to fatigue that psoas muscle so we can kind of tremor and shake that off. I always explain it in terms of if you look at a dog during a thunderstorm and that dog sits there and shake, that's what it's doing. It's removing that trauma. So after it's done, it can go on along its way, eat its dog food, have a happy old day, lick your face, whatever, right?
Right.
So in lieu of the TRE, that's kind of what got me into my non-traditional path and how I became a provider, because when I was doing TRE, the sleep that I was getting was amazing. So I knew the benefits and the power of it. And again, I didn't understand the body between, the mind, the stomach, just how everything is so connected. And I'm still learning that every single day. And the more I learn, the more I'm like, oh, TRE is a need, or, how meditation changes the neural pathways if you do it on a regular basis. So the more and more holistic I get with the approach, it's what we want to share. And TRE is kind of that foundation for us.
What do you know about why emotions would get stored in the psoas muscle, Dr. Dave? Like, what, we know that oxidative stress gets released in the body, and that's what causes kind of the mess inside. But what do we know about why it gets stored there? Do you?
It's not
your area. Yeah. I just thought maybe you took a class on it one day along the way, right? Now I get it. You got more going on. You're studying different things. But it's fascinating to me that happens, because it happens to a lot of people. And you talk to a lot of spiritual healers, and they will all kind of get into that. They'll be like, yeah, your feet. People get plantar fasciitis all of a sudden, or they'll get lower back pain, or they get shoulder pains, or they get neck pains. They get all this weird stuff that they never had before. And, everybody's going to the doctor right now, and the doctor's going, I don't know. Yeah. There's nothing. I can't see anything.
Well, go to a guy that we both follow, David Goggins.
Yeah.
So Goggins is this ultra marathon, former Navy SEAL, just badass dude, right? Just there's no fear to him.
He's over the top.
Yeah, he's way over the top. But when he was talking about all his running and stuff that he did,
right,
it was his psoas muscles that were creating issues with his legs and feet, because his psoas muscles were so tight. And so he got a physical therapist to work on the psoas, and once it released, he had like record times and stuff on like courses he was doing because it was released.
Who's a good candidate for TRE?
Anybody.
Really?
Anybody, yeah. I mean, I look at it as being a mix of meditation and yoga, right? And each one's going to have their benefits. There was a study that was actually done down at the VA hospital here in Phoenix a couple of years ago. And I believe they're writing the paper on it or whatnot, but they saw benefits that almost superseded some of the yoga practices. But the problem is some of the veterans in the study were actually, I don't want to say healed, but getting better. And they know they were getting better. So what did these veterans do? They left the study because they didn't want their disability to go down. So we want to try to redo the study with civilians, right? Because then we can see a true A to Z and what's being fixed and what's getting cleaned up, and we can have people stay in the study. So the Department of Defense actually did a huge study on it right here at the Phoenix VA. So
that's interesting.
Yeah.
And great. So now where do you do it?
So we are partnered up with Moment of Truth. They're just off of Bell and about 91st Street out in Peoria. It's a little great yoga studio. They have aerial yoga. Really great. We go there for massages and stuff. And we got to know the owner, Amy. It's a beautiful little yoga studio. And so we'll be doing that 7:15 tomorrow night. At the Moment of Truth out there in Peoria, and we will be doing that on a weekly basis going forward every Thursday. So I'm loving it because it'll get me back in the practice of doing it on a more regular basis myself.
Which is the medicine.
That is, yeah.
I mean, it's the helping other people. I mean, do you feel that way as a psychiatrist? Do you feel like every day you get to wake up and help somebody, that's your own medicine too?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of benefit in that. You see the results of what you're doing with other people, and it's very gratifying and self-fulfilling.
Yeah, I could see that. Now, I do want to talk about one thing that's really kind of a universal thing, which is you're going to start holding space now for other people, and you're going to be helping them through their trauma. You have a guy to your left who's been working people through their trauma for 23 plus years. I know my wife, and this is why I say it's for everybody. My wife's a hairstylist, but still she's with people. She's touching their hair. She's talking to them, and she has a process for getting rid of the energy at the end of the day. She's very conscious. Her thing is, last client leaves, she cleans everything up, she washes her hands, and that's it. It's a ceremony for her. She washes out that energy, and then she leaves the salon and she comes home. And it's great, isn't it? I mean, I would have never thought of that. But how do humans have to do that while they hold space for others? What's your tip?
Yeah, you need to have something. I mean, for everybody, it's different. Some people like to exercise, go for a run, work out at the gym. I always found the drive home from work to be therapeutic. Just kind of getting behind the wheel of the car, and your mind can wander while you're driving. Not too much. Obviously, you have to pay attention to the road, but it's just kind of intermezzo, like it's a little space in between where you can get to reset before dealing with family and other things.
How do you not let it infiltrate home? Like, how do you not talk to 3 people in a day that all have marriage problems and not go home and want to hug your wife?
Yeah. For me personally, as a psychiatrist, I always had a mindset that I will be 100% with you in the room. And as soon as you walk out that door, your problems go with you. And that's not to say that I haven't had an occasional client where the session was so intense that I felt like I needed a nap afterwards.
Sure. It can be exhausting.
Yeah. So sometimes that does happen. But as far as not taking things home, I'm here to help you with your problems, and they are in fact your problems. I will help you as best as I can, but when you walk out the door, they go with you. And that, having that line, I think kind of helps that you don't, take things home and ruminate about them, and you'll see them again and you'll have a chance to work on it again. And there's other people that you have to reserve yourself for, so you have to pace it.
Yeah.
How's that land with you?
Same thing, TRE, when I've done it previously for like corporations and some of their folks, same thing. I don't want to say smudging, but kind of like similar to your wife, kind of, get rid of it. I go set with myself for a little bit, kind of think about the processes and what happened during those sessions. And then just realizing, okay, we're done with it. We're going to leave it here. Same thing. I'll wash my hands. It's kind of a weird thing. I'll brush my feet before I cross the door threshold. I was like, okay, I'm done.
So you're a little ceremonial too.
I try to be about it. Because I'm holding that space. I'm holding that energy. Otherwise it's going home with me. So
yeah. It's so interesting to me because I find myself thinking about it quite a bit and not able to leave the meeting, not able to leave the space. And, I think when I was so I'm probably going down a weird tangent, but when I was deep in my depression, I had a psychologist, try to get me to let go, try to get me to release control. And that's what we were working on. And I kept going back to him week after week. And I said, dude, here's my thing, man. Letting go to me feels like I've stopped caring. And I cannot jump that bridge. I can't figure that out. I don't know how to unplug. It feels like I don't give a shit anymore. And that feels worse.
Yeah, but you can compartmentalize, so caring about something doesn't mean that it's on your mind 24/7. You can care for it for a period of time, and you're still caring for it, but then you're also giving your attention to other things, right?
Certainly.
So I think that's kind of the line to draw with that.
Yeah, I've gotten a lot better at it, but still there's times where it stays with me.
I would call it reprioritizing.
Yeah.
And I think that's helped me. Like there's certain things, like I know maybe there's a family member that might have an issue and I can help you, but you got to help yourself. And I love you from afar, but I'm not bringing your bullshit into my bullshit because I'm cleaning my bullshit up. I don't need more. Right. So I think it's reprioritizing. I don't think it's that you don't care about a subject more.
Different funnel, different
You're just
filter.
looking at it from a different lens now.
Yeah. All right.
And I think you can also assign a time for it to come back to it. Right? Because sometimes the brain doesn't want to let it go.
Good idea.
Like if you just say, okay, I'm not going to think about this right now. But it's still an issue. It's still an active thing that hasn't been resolved yet, right? And the fact that it's not resolved means your brain still has a ticket for it as pending, right?
Totally, man.
So sometimes assigning a time to it. So, okay, I'm not going to think about it anymore tonight. I've done about as much as I can. There's nothing more that I can add to it at this point. I need to take care of this. I need to do the dishes. I need to get my kids over to hockey, right? Like there's things that I have to do, right? So we're not going to make any more progress with it at this point. I can pick it up tomorrow morning. I have time at 9:00. We'll take a look at it again at 9. And then just having that time assignment kind of lets your brain say, oh, okay, so we don't need to do this right now. It's pending, but we got a safety net. We got a date and time where we're going to come back to it.
Could you use this for mental wellness? Could you use this?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it would transcend pretty nicely that way.
Yep.
Yeah.
When you feel like you're getting stuck, right? Like the thought is on your mind, it's still pending. There's nothing we're going to do right now to get it resolved. Like I think of a situation like, you get into a spat with your neighbor and then they take you to court, and you're angry because it's something really stupid and the court date's not for 2 weeks and every day you're thinking about it. Well, you're not going to change anything until you actually go to that court date. So why are you wasting all the mental energy, chewing on it? You're not doing anything new. You're not gathering any additional information to help your case. You're just churning. That's not useful.
And you're in that moment and not in the present moment.
That's right.
That's a big one.
Why do you think people have that habit? Like you said, just kind of sitting there and churning on it for 2 weeks. Because I definitely have done that with.
Is it the innate need to solve problems?
So some of it is your personality, right? So some people have,
because some people don't care. Some people are fine.
Some people can.
A long time ago.
Some people can release it, right?
Yeah. I envy those folks.
But if you tend to be a little bit more on the obsessive side naturally, having something hanging like that, and especially something, you getting called to court, that kind of feels like you're attacking my character, right?
Sure.
Now you're saying I'm a bad person,
Yep.
And so now there's an emotional investment in it. You're angry about it, and so that tends to make it more sticky. But either way, like you have to at some point stop and take a step back from it and say, okay, there's really nothing more that I can add right now. I think of I had knee surgery in 2019, and I went back for my first follow-up, and the original surgery didn't take. I had to go back in and have it redone, right? And so they weren't going to get me rescheduled for another week, and so I had to practice that and say, okay, I have 6 more days before I go in for surgery. I can't be thinking about this all the time. There's nothing that's going to change between now and then. I just have to go and get it done. Right? And so you catch yourself spinning up, and the thoughts are there and worrying about it. You say, oh, hold on a second. This is not taking us anywhere. This is not adding anything to the conversation. We just need to put that aside. Monday morning is the surgery. We're going to go in early in the morning. We'll pre-op, and then we'll think about it then. Yeah.
Well, and I would say even for those that struggle with that, I would say I'm halfway across the bridge. I still struggle with it, but I can talk to myself internally, like Dr. Dave said, and say, hey, pump the brakes. There ain't shit that's going to happen in 6 days. Right. Stop thinking about it. Approach it when it's there. Now I can kind of lay that groundwork now to where previously I would just spin, and I would spin out of control. And before you know it, something else would happen. And then the woe's me kind of freaking thing happens. But yeah, I love that because it's, like I said, I feel like I'm halfway across that damn bridge now where I can actually analyze that from a different perspective now.
And to tie into other things that we've talked about before, about patterns being permanent in the brain, right? So you may always catch yourself going into that obsessive mode when something comes up, right? So there's probably not much you're going to do to change that, at least the initial hook, right? But what you can improve on is shortening the time before you let it go, right? So that's the part that you have some control over. The fact that it catches you, and you want to start spinning up, or you catch yourself starting to spin up, there's nothing you can do about that part of it. But that's fine. Like, as long as you recognize the pattern, then you can get a handle on it quicker. And that's what you're saying, Chad, about getting halfway there. Like, it'll get shorter and shorter the more you recognize, like, okay, I'm doing that again, and that's fine. I know what this is, and I know what I need to do. I need to just drop this for right now.
It's like when I had back pain and somebody said, become friends with the pain. I was like, what? The hell are you talking about?
They've never had back pain.
They never had back pain, right? But I eventually did land on that idea of becoming friends with the pain. It was pivotal in my success and of getting healthier, right? And even now, today, if I get back pain, I'm able to be friends with the pain and go, okay, why are you here? I know you're a signal. What's going on? Am I tired? Do I need water? Should I move some more? Now I have a different relationship with the pain, and I feel like that's kind of what you're talking about with this.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Any last words before we jump out of the sweat lodge that we're hanging out in here today?
No,
it's hot.
I'm sweating, man.
Are you?
Sweating like a whore in church.
We thought we might lose a few pounds during this podcast recording. We're actually recording in the green room today of this place called STN. It's a social television network, and tonight they're doing a dress rehearsal for this television show that they're getting ready to produce monthly. And the three of us, plus our friend Gary, who's hanging out, are going to sit in the crowd and we're going to heckle.
Love it.
Actually, it's not true. We're going to watch, and then we're going to offer some feedback based on how things go so that they can make it smoother when it happens for real.
That's awesome.
On September 1st.
Yeah, I'm excited about this. Yeah. I looked at some of the videos that they have, and they're interviewing local business people, local entrepreneurs, and it really, you're bringing it back locally and kind of hearing people's stories, and we're all about hearing people's stories.
Of course. Yeah, this might be a place for Mental Joe one day down the road, man.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we'll bring you and your mushroom shirt in.
There we go.
Have a little fun. Well, don't forget to support Chad and the Mental Joe apparel. Find them online.
Yep.
You want to tell them where? That was your cue.
Oh, well, we go over this. So it's mentaljoe.com, or you can find us on Instagram at Mental Joe Apparel.
Okay. And then you're starting to do the TRE tomorrow in Peoria at the Moment of Truth.
Correct.
Yeah. All right,
7:15.
Dr. Dave, anything on your mind you want to let the masses understand?
No, kids are back to school and kind of getting back into a regular routine again now.
How do you like it?
Out of the summer routine.
How do you like it?
Good.
I'm hearing all the educators, they're using the word reset. Like, we've been through this pandemic for the last couple of years, and now it's almost time to reset our kids and almost reset ourselves in a lot of ways,
Absolutely.
too. Appreciate everybody listening to our podcast. We'll see you next Wednesday. We'll be back live on the stream. For Dr. Dave and Chad from Mental Joe and Mathew Blades, have a wonderful afternoon.